Hello everyone, my name is Timothy. I hope everyone is well today, wherever you are in the world. Let's get started. We all aspire to reach old age. I am sure we can all relate to having a family member that is in the later years of their life. Some of these individuals may have challenges with lack of mobility, health, necessary medications, isolation, and technology. But there are also great benefits of reaching a senior citizen's age. They have wisdom, knowledge, more life experience, and let's not forget, great senior discounts. From ancient Egyptians, Greek, Romans, to Norse and Chinese mythology, old age has been a double-edged sword. While people yearn to live a long life, when they get to old age, they want their youth back. Let's get some perspective. The average age of the ancient Egyptians was approximately 32 years old, 30 for women and 34 for men. This is when most people in our current society are finally achieving some form of professional or personal success. Think about it. The Egyptians are the first empire of ancient times. It lasted roughly 3,000 years. But most of these people were not expected to live past 40 years old. There were no wrinkles or gray hair, just time and age that was working against them. Continuing on, the Greek had the god Geras, who is depicted as a tiny shriveled up old man. The Roman equivalent is senectus, meaning old age or dotage. Both the Greeks and Romans were focused on youth and did not really give backstories to the representation of old age. Like the Egyptians, most people in Greek and Roman society did not live to what we today would consider old age. Let's quickly look at the Norse god Thor. Everyone knows who Thor is. He is the embodiment of strength and wields a giant hammer. The most famous and powerful Norse god wrestled with Ellie, who is the incarnation of old age in folklore. Even Thor, a god, lost his fight with not aging. While the Chinese characterize old age as something to be revered, the old man of the South Pole, Zhao Jing, is often depicted in the Chinese pictures as an old man with a long white beard with a deer by his side. This portrayal comes from a story of an emperor of the North Song dynasty who had invited such an old man from the street and later considered the old man as a sign of his longevity. While these cultures of the past have mixed views of old age, our current time seems to pass most seniors off to have lived their lives. Now it's time to let the next generation take over. With the average life expectancy well above 65 years old, this becomes an issue of how to manage and live a fulfilling life while aging in place. As a group, we tackled the issue of aging in place while embracing the design thinking concepts laid out in the last 6 weeks of this course. We were able to use the 4 phases of design thinking to put together a manual for aging in place. We're going to address the reflections of our group concerning aging in place through the overall design thinking experience. For example, what were our key takeaways? What were ideas for implementation in the workplace? What did we expect? What surprised us? What would we have done differently? We'll discuss these questions presented by the discover, define, create, and evaluate stages in real time. I will now turn over the presentation to my group members, Jenny, Alan, John, and Eric, who will be discussing design thinking phase experiences from our Aging in Place project. Enjoy. Jenny, you have the floor.
As Tim mentioned, today's seniors are faced with a plethora of challenges. We took some time to really understand by discovering just what some of those unique challenges are. We found an abundance of information available on the web through secondary sources such as Medicare that helped us to really feel empathy for our users. As the upcoming generation, there were a lot of unknowns for us as we do not have the experiential knowledge of living as a senior. As we began to dig deeper through our interviews with seniors, we learned that asking the right questions is the key to opening the door to learn what we don't know. Here's an example of one of the questions that we asked. Tell me about any social gatherings you partake in. By engaging with high-quality questions and avoiding those that were binary or leading, we were able to hear emotional, honest, and raw stories from our interviewees. We were most surprised by how much our seniors shared with us and attribute this to our level of empathy built through our research. That genuine connection with our interviewees paid dividends in our data assimilation process. The interview guide was invaluable as it helped to keep the conversation on track so we could continue discovering. This became the nuts and bolts of our process from start to finish. Initially, we all had different thoughts on how useful we expected the interview process to be. Some of us felt it would be a great framework to setting the problem, while the rest of the group was surprised to find just how useful the interviews became. We think this could represent a trend in the workplace too. Because we learned the value of the interview process through our experience, we think that functionalized roles could have tailored questions to discover what employees do and reduce organizational pain through enterprise mindsets. While we learned a tremendous amount through our Discover process, next time we are going to spend more time with our interviewees and ask even more questions. Erring on the side of more data and more information can provide additional unrealized insights, fueling the definition of great problems. As Dr. Phil once said, half the solution to any problem lies in defining it.
Thanks, Jenny. And furthering Dr. Phil's viewpoint of first defining a problem prior to trying to solve it, we must first collect data, then synthesize our data into our viewpoint of what we think the problem is our users are experiencing. Just as we heard Ernesto Cirilli discuss the challenges he faced helping the people of Zimbabwe with enterprise facilitation by striving to shut up and listen, we planted a problem-defining seed. To water this seed, we first used Cirilli's advice. In our interviews, we shut up and we listened to our users' thoughts, experiences, aspirations, as well as focused on their body language to determine their feelings about certain subjects we discussed. We took notes of any and every observation we witnessed during the interviews, as this was our interaction with them, and most importantly, how we discovered empathy. Similar to the discovery phase, we used the interviews as our data collection of the define mode. But instead of using secondary research resources, we had first-hand resources, the users themselves. In order to define the problem, we began synthesizing all the data we gathered from our interviews. Our initial expectation of this step wasn't to be overwhelmed with the enormous amount of data we received, nor how we were going to interpret all of it into thoughtful insights in order to define our user's problem. To our surprise, by breaking down our interviews into cognitive, emotional, and behavioral responses as a visual representation into the empathy maps, we were able to think about the user's aspirations and desires. This was a critical step of precisely dissecting our interviews in order to identify an accurate portrayal of the interviewee's needs and wants. In this step, we discovered the empathy maps were an informative tool helping us learn not only what a customer or client might need, but also who they are as people. Our next step after constructing the empathy map was to write our interviewees' personas to determine the user's needs. As we were editing the personas, instantaneously we began discovering themes and trends of our users. Having the strong foundation of the empathy maps made the personas quick and easy to write. This made for an even easier transition into our point of view statements as themes and trends from our personas were apparent of our users' needs. As we utilized the Nina principle, we sought and found insight of problems the users were facing, therefore had an advantage in the market. And with this advantage, we were ready to grow our ideas from an abstract idea into something real. To talk about this creative transition in more detail, here's John.
Thank you, Alan. If until now our project was a single-celled organism, churning about in the primordial soup of ideation, in the create mode, it's transformed into an ugly duckling, informed, shaped by the modes that have come before it, yet not quite having assumed its final or most graceful form. The create mode was a difficult, yet enjoyable process of assimilation in which we utilized the information learned previously and developed a tangible output that could be tested with users. While this process was challenging, it was also enjoyable to see how a mass of information could be consolidated into a rough and ready prototype. During the create mode, our group aimed to hit the sweet spot with our prototype that would maximize its desirability to users, its technological feasibility, and also its business viability. If any of these areas were insufficiently accounted for, our prototype would begin at a disadvantage, which could be fatal in an economic environment in which even seemingly perfect ideas can often fail. Therefore, we made sure to keep these principles in mind as we proceeded through the create mode. The group agreed that this was the most fun part of the assignment, and being able to incorporate each other's brainstorming, ideas, and individual input translated into a prototype that met, we thought, a wide variety of user needs while not falling prey to a restrictive singularity of purpose or design. In this critical feedback stage, the prototype also helped us to better understand if a product will be valuable and useful to our users. Sometimes it might be that the designer thinks everything has fallen into place, everything's wonderful, but its end user does not share a positive view of the final product. The create mode therefore acts as a kind of system of checks and balances. And there are numerous ways that the create mode can be implemented naturally and organically into the workplace. 5 that we identified are: 1. By simply incorporating how might we and point of view statements into the creation process, we can create better prototypes. Many companies and their employees have no idea about this. One suggestion is an idea may be a design thinking workshop to remind employees about the significance of following these steps. Number 2, you can create a prototype in as little as 90 minutes. Even though the prototype might be low resolution, it can still yield a multitude of great results. Number 3, the create mode helps us understand the end user better. To serve better products, there must be a good level of trust and open forum questions to help teams dive into problems deeper. That's just common sense. Number 4, implementation of the create mode in the work environment is essentially already taking place when your boss has issues with your work. Best practice, if you would like to remain employed, is to create and bring a resolution to your boss and present it as a solution. Number 5, prototyping can be utilized to help answer any number of questions. For example, perhaps an architect needs to build a park. The neoclassical or formalistic style of building might be what the architect likes, but as it turns out, the end users might prefer a structure that more closely resembles the local McDonald's than it does Notre Dame. Also, the group had varying expectations as to what the prototype would encompass. Some members worried that our prototype would simply be a clone of popular products already existing in the market. Other group members thought the prototype would take physical form rather than being a computerized application. We were surprised at the sheer number of ideas available for consideration and implementation into the prototype. After assimilating the information we'd received over the past modes and creating the prototype, it turned out that there really was nothing like it out there. It was unique. This was a definite surprise and flew in the face of some group members' expectations. For example, our brainstorming session produced more than 100 unique ideas of possible features available to incorporate into the prototype. From there, we used a targeted how might we and final POV statement to discern just what was going to make the final cut. This parsing and selection of features would have been virtually impossible to complete with any kind of sense of authoritativeness without having first done the crucial discover and define work that preceded it. The create mode is a critically important stage in the design thinking process and helps designers make first contact with end users in a low resolution, unthreatening manner, so as to elicit useful feedback regarding how the prototype will begin to fare in the kill or be killed jungle of today's marketplace. Now we'll turn to Eric to fill us in on the evaluate mode.
Thank you, John. Last but certainly not least in the design thinking process is the evaluate mode. In the evaluate mode, like a stargazer who is constantly pivoting his telescope to see new insights, in this mode, we got to test our prototype, but initially to do so successfully, the group had to offer the critical context to frame the end user with the low-light prototype, and then allow us to gain critical feedback on their reaction, misuse, questions, feelings, thoughts, and other notable observations to help further contour the next iteration of the prototype. Like in the Discover mode, as Jenny earlier articulated so well, the group was back like ethnographers in the field, asking our end users to view the prototype and give a first-hand account of their experience. Having this cross-section between a focused user and a focused prototype enhanced further insights. Having another opportunity to expand on face-to-face contact allowed the interaction to enrich the empathy experience and needs of both the user and group members. Once again, this discourse created a dual conversation that expanded towards a focused prototype that the user could feel comfortable experiencing. An essential element in the evaluate mode that the group found consensus on was that it is not the end of the design thinking phase. Rather, going a step back to review findings and pivoting is important to discover ways to improve and discover more information and insight about the user. The group was hesitant with the initial low-light prototype. Our initial expectations were grounded on how simplistic the look and feel would be interpreted by the end user. However, upon presenting the prototype, we were surprised how some of the greatest ideas came after the first prototype was shown to the end user. For example, one user suggested more opportunities for sexual encounters or online dating, something that the group never foresaw or even expected. A useful strategy to employ this mode in the workplace would be helping reduce waste in operations and revisiting ways that these improvements would help drive improvements along the processes. For example, by employing little bets, organizations can slowly improve many areas of improvement by evaluating operations internally and externally. Providing information and dialogue across different functions can alleviate conflicting assumptions and miscommunication. This can be done by a deeper evaluation of the culture and mission of the organization. The evaluation mode is clearly the launching pad in our findings to possibly go back to the beginning and open the Discover mode door to help explore more insights by following the design thinking steps. It is apparent that a few more cycles might be potentially needed to fully iron out every small detail and produce a possible market-ready product. I will now pass the attention to Timothy for our conclusion to the group project.
Wow, that was great. Thank you, Jenny, Alan, John, and Eric for taking us through the journey the group experienced while going through the phases of the design thinking infinity model of discover, define, create, and evaluate for the Aging in Place project. It was interesting. We as a group do not know if we were right or wrong. That is the beauty of design thinking. Wrong can turn into right and vice versa. So we challenge you with this. Be a leader in both your professional and personal lives. Be empathetic, build trust, and most of all, create solutions by using the design thinking model. Group 3 will leave you with this quote from David M. Kelly, the founder of IDEO. The main tenet of design thinking is empathy for people you're trying to design for. Leadership is exactly the same thing. Building empathy for the people that you're entrusted to help. Now, go out, move forward, and design think. You will not regret it. Thank you.